From Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm your host, Reverend Welton Gaddy. For years now, it's been virtually impossible to hear of a headline-making funeral without also hearing that the notorious hate group that bills itself the Westboro Baptist Church will be making an appearance at that funeral. Glassy-eyed members hold colorful placards insisting that they know whom God hates. If these actions weren't so incredibly offensive to grieving families and loved ones, there actually would be genuine, if ironic, value in the organization's actions. Over the years, their protests have served to inspire beautiful acts of defiance, protection, and even fundraising for worthy causes, and I'll bet more than one American over the years has come to question his own homophobia when faced with such a cartoonish expression of this insidious impulse. As public as the group's actions are, however, what's far less known is the horror of life within the Westboro Baptist Church. Having spent 7 years as a member, starting at age 15 when her family joined the group, Lauren Drain knows firsthand what that experience is like. And having written a book titled Banished, Surviving My Years in the Westboro Baptist Church, Lauren Drain joins me now on State of Belief Radio. Lauren, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It was actually stunning to me to learn about the impact that joining Westboro had on your family. Would us begin there, and you talk a little about how all of that came about?
Okay. Well, my family joined after my father set out to make a documentary on the church. He actually had known about the group when we had previously lived in Kansas, and he was going to do a mockumentary-style film. And after he'd spent a good amount of time with them, a full summer, he had started to acquire the beliefs and think that their doctrine was something he wanted to raise his family under, and brought our family from Florida to Kansas after that.
So it happened pretty quickly, and how did you see your family begin to change after getting involved?
My father had been controlling a lot of things in our house. He took me out of high school. He took me away from my friends and family. And he was telling me, he hadn't raised me right, and I was acting like a rebellious teen, and so he was going to start raising me Christian, and he wanted to do it through the church, through Westboro, and that's when things started changing for us in our house. At that time he was physically controlling, emotionally controlling, and convinced our family that he was trying to do a good thing for us and, raise us Christian at that point.
Lauren, what was he afraid of? What was he fearful about for you?
For me, I was 14. I was starting to, hang out with a lot of friends from school. I think, I flirted with guys at times that, really scared him. I think the whole, just teenage years scared him a lot.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the only reason. I just know that he was very upset about seeing me hanging out with certain people, and he was saying he didn't think he raised me right and that I was being rebellious. So I decided, maybe he was right. Maybe I should, listen to him. Maybe there is a way for me to be better and be more Christian-like and make him proud. And so he really manipulated me into believing that this was the right thing to do.
Had you been attracted to the church before that, or just blasé about it, or how were you feeling at that point?
I hadn't known about the church before my father brought it to my attention, so I didn't really have thoughts about it. And I hadn't really been raised religious prior to that either. So I don't know. At the time, my father was very convincing and very assertive in that he was going to bring his family there, and he was going to, make us a better family, make us more Christian, and all this such things. And I was being cut off from every other friend or family member at that time, so it it really was convincing.
Yeah. Most people only know of the Phelps family as comprising Westboro Baptist Church. How many other members of the family are there, and are all of them in the church?
The Westboro is mostly made up of family. The pastor, Fred Phelps, and his children and their children. There's a couple other families, my family included, that joined or have been going there. But yeah, it's a smaller group. It's somewhere around 70 when I was there, and it's probably a lot less now because people have left and been kicked out since.
I see. What was life like inside the church?
Life like. When I first joined, I was very surprised, but all of the members on a one-on-one basis were very kind, very supportive, very like a community-like, and I felt like I was eager to make friends with everyone. The girls my age were very kind, and I felt like I was part of an important community. As far as like the pickets go and everything, back then it was a lot less fierce, a lot less intense in terms of what they were picketing. They weren't picketing soldier funerals.
Right.
They weren't picketing tragedies. It was more of a lot less extreme views.
Mm-hmm.
But I was being inundated with this new doctrine and brainwashed to believe these certain things, and I really didn't have any other outside perspective in terms of what the Bible meant or what it was to be Christian. In
the service itself, were the sermons were they hate-filled? Did you ever hear about love? How did that go?
Definitely, the sermons were very hateful and judgmental. A lot of times they surrounded current events, and whatever was in the news, the pastor would be condemning this and condemning that.
I see.
A lot of it had to do with support or acceptance of homosexuality. But in terms of if they ever talked about love, they only talked about love in terms of the members, just the members of the church.
Right.
So they did, but they were very elitist in their mentality. They only thought that they were the only ones going to heaven. They were the only ones God loved, and that we were some type of very select few that God loved, and therefore we held a special relationship with God over everyone else. And not only that, but when we would go to the protests and people would get angry or yell things at our signs, we would feel justified because we were taught that you'll be hated for what you say. That Christ said you'll be hated for my name's sake. So we were being validated that we were, saying the right things because people hated what we had to say. Mm-hmm. It would isolate us even further.
Do you remember when you first had a major question, or when you first felt, I'm not sure I can deal with this? Did that come slowly? Do you remember when that happened first, that you thought something's wrong here?
Yes. That happened probably several years. The first couple of years, I was really being inundated with it. I was assimilating to it. I was, learning about the Bible, and that was making me really interested, intrigued. It wasn't until probably around age 19, 20, 21 that I started questioning, the extremeness of our pickets and our protests. They started picketing military funerals. I wasn't fully understanding that. They started protesting children's funerals, tragedies, and at one point even picketed a hospital where soldiers, wounded soldiers were at. Mm-hmm. And I really thought that was cruel. I didn't know how we could justify saying those things. I felt like even our approach was rude. We were taunting people. Our attitude was not humble or meek like the Bible suggests you should be. And I started questioning things. I would ask some of the elders. I would ask some of the other members. And they really didn't like my questions. Mm-hmm. If I went too far with it, they'd call me divisive and evil, and stop bringing up false doctrine. And so I really was discouraged in terms of asking questions. I asked other questions about verses. They didn't know what the verses meant, and anytime they didn't know what something meant, they didn't act humble about it or try to investigate. They were just like, "Oh, we don't really know what that means. We're moving on to the next topic." Yeah. So I saw quickly that asking questions was not accepted. The pastor didn't want to talk about certain things. And, I eventually I eventually was going to leave on my own, but at that point, I saw the consequences. The consequences was losing my family forever, being cut off, losing my young siblings. I had three young siblings who were very young at the time. They were 3 and 5 and 16. And not only that, but I had been brainwashed for 7 years to believe this was the truth. This is who God was. This is what the truth was. And I thought the whole world was evil. I thought I was going to hell. It was a very scary time in my life.
I bet.
And, shortly after asking the questions and stirring up all that controversy, I ended up getting kicked out. And it was really a hard reality to face at first. I wasn't prepared for that.
Lauren, did your family know that you were beginning to have those negative thoughts and that you were thinking about leaving?
I didn't really make it known because I didn't want to be shunned. I didn't want to be. I wasn't ready. I wasn't mentally ready to leave my family. And if you make it known, you'll get kicked out faster than you can think. And it's just a gang-like mentality. You're loved and accepted when you're inside, and as soon as you question things or start thinking about other things, you're kicked out, and they act like they never knew you. They act like they never loved you. And it's humiliating. It's tragic. It's emotional, and I felt like I was abandoning my siblings, who I love dearly and still do. So, of course, I wanted to hold on tightly to staying there because I was going to be losing something precious.
Well, then how did you handle the banishment that you endured?
It was very hard. I was living on my own in Kansas. Thankfully, I had a job already at the time, but it was a very bad part of town. I wasn't prepared, money-wise or anything. And I tried to keep contact with my family. I tried to ask them, look, can you forgive me for this? Can I still be your daughter? Can I still have contact with you? Can I see my siblings? I tried for 6 months to try to make amends with my family. And when I realized there was no changing their mind, there was no changing their heart, they were determined to, stay with this religion and this doctrine and nothing else would shake their mind. I was traumatized. I had to move on.
Sure.
I had to move on with my life.
Were you getting any help?
I was still kind of programmed to believe some of those beliefs for a while, and it took me a while. One of the people that helped me the most was someone I had met online. His mother was showing me things in the Bible that I had never really seen before, that there was a lot more to what the Bible had to say other than what I'd been taught. And it took a while for me to really start to assimilate new beliefs, but she was showing me a lot of compassion, and I had some support that way. And I ended up moving to Connecticut after that because I wasn't finding any support in Kansas, and I was running into people from the church that would say nasty things to me, in public, and I wasn't trying to, subject myself to that kind of treatment anymore.
As saturated as you were in that situation, I am frankly astounded that you have come through the experience and you don't seem to be angry at God or mad about your faith. How did you do that?
I know, that's a really good question. I thought for a good while there that I lost my faith in God. I'd lost my identity. I was scared, and I just kept praying that wouldn't happen to me. I prayed for it to know a better way, to find out a better truth, and when I was showed that through the Bible and through friends and support, that's when I really was able to move past it and know that the Westboro does not own what God says. It does not, they're not the ultimate say in everything. They think they are. They're very sanctimonious in it, but that's, that I moved past that, realizing, okay, I made peace with that. And I also, part of me, was so angry for losing my family that I wanted to be, I could have been vengeful about it. And I thought, that's not the right thing to do. I need to, seek forgiveness for some of the things that I've done, and I should forgive anyone and give hope for someone else to change one day.
Yeah.
So I try to hold out a message of hope and forgiveness, and also be an example to my siblings that that's the right thing to do as well, if they hopefully they could ever leave one day.
Lauren, you've been doing a lot of interviews since the book came out. I've seen some of them, and I'm sure some of that has been painful, maybe also cathartic. I know from my perspective you've done a terrific job with it. What do you wish some interviewer had asked you, that a question that hasn't been asked, and how would you answer that question? I'm just curious.
That's a good question. I didn't really think of that. I usually just try to, the best question usually I feel like is asking, what's the whole point of me writing my book?
Right.
I was trying to reach out to my siblings, to the ones that don't have any control over how they're living and believing right now, and say that, God is forgiving, and there is a side of God that they have not seen or been taught about. And I really hope that they can find that one day, and they can not be so judgmental and arrogant.
Yeah. And
the way they are now, and that if they do ever change, they will be accepted and forgiven. People
right.
won't hold it against them. I'm shocked by the amount of encouragement and support people have given me, despite my past, despite some of the horrible things that I protested, and it's really quite comforting to know that your past won't be held over your head for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you can move on past that. And as scary as it is to question your own beliefs, sometimes that's what it takes, is to question things and ask, is this the right thing to do? Am I doing the right thing?
It takes an awful lot of courage to do that, and you obviously have. One more very brief question, though I could talk with you, seems like, all afternoon. There are not many people that are in the kind of captivity that you were in because of the uniqueness of that church. But there are a lot of people that listen to the show that are in places they don't want to be. They feel trapped. They feel like they're not taken seriously for who they are. What would you say to those people?
I'd say, it's really hard when you're met with such opposition, but just eventually, if you hold to who you are, eventually people will see that. Eventually people will respect that. And, try not to be so offended by the critics. I get offended sometimes, but at the end of the day, I know I have a good message, and I know I have good intentions, and good people will see that, and that's all that you can really hope for. So I guess I would say that. Just, stay strong, and as long as you have good intentions for things, it should work out for you.
And you have great credibility to say that. Lauren Drain is the author of Banished, Surviving My Years in the Westboro Baptist Church. As public as this group's hate-filled actions are, little has been known about life inside that organization. So, Lauren, you've made a significant contribution with your story, and I want to thank you for telling it. I sincerely hope the day will come soon when you'll be able to reunite with all of your family, free of the Phelps cult and its influence. If there's ever any way that we at State of Belief can be of help and support to you, we want to do that. I thank you for being with us today on State of Belief Radio.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.